Now I would like to invite Mr. Javier Herrera, also a PhD student in Keiser University. He will be presenting Education in Times of Peace. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Foto. I'm excited. Okay, this is the great privilege to be here and to learn from you, most honorable diplomats, teachers, and colleagues, and please receive the honor that you deserve. I want to leave a disciplinary message about education in times of peace, for your consideration, reflection, and action, which contains thoughts and questions from authors and leaders that I greatly admire. As Albert Einstein said, the important thing is not to stop asking questions, and I believe that. This is an interdisciplinary message because I try to be interdisciplinary. When I was young, I studied biology, and 40 years later, I graduated as coaching, theology, Christian and organizational leadership. During pandemic time, I studied neuroeducation, instructional design, master in leadership and education, and now I'm a doctoral student at Keiser University. My passions are studying, reading, writing, teaching, painting. My first language is Spanish. Please excuse me for some pronunciation problems, okay? Mercy for me. For better understanding, please follow if you want the talks included in the brochure that you received, okay? When we hear about the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we all know that hard times are coming. War and pandemic show us a turbulent panorama which we cannot ignore, although here, we are in a safe place. Everything will be fine, okay? Everything will be fine. The other day, I saw on Netflix the movie Munich, The Edge of the World. The Prime Minister of England, the Honorable Neville Chamberlain, wants to prevent the expansion of Germany through Europe and beginning the Second World War. In his speech, the minister said, "I want to say a few words to you, brilliant people, and to empire. Now, I ask you to remain calm for the events of the next few days. While the war has not started, there is always hope that I can be avoided, and know that I will work for peace until the last moment." In concrete words, the minister wants to say, listen carefully, wait calmly, while I work to achieve a peace. I wonder about how it is possible to wait calmly. What about education in turbulent times like war? What about teachers, students, and schools? It is possible to continue with education? Is war the only current turbulent scenario? About the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, this week, the British Minister of Defense, Ben Wallace, said there is a smell of Munich in the air. For his part, the journalist Guillermo Altar the last month writes, starting a war is a very prestigious job, with a long and glorious tradition, a casus belli, of many pretexts to unleash conflicts, and thus its consequences are impossible to control and imagine. The historian Margaret Macmillan writes that the causes of a war many seem absurd and incoherent, but behind them there are often much deeper disputes and tensions. Sometimes a spark is all it takes to set a large amount of wood on fire. She says something else. Very few things in history are inevitable. Forces, ideas, prejudice, institutions, and conflicts are important factors, but they do not consider the individuals. in whose hands it was to say, yes, go ahead, let's start war. Or say, no, stop. Wars are declared and prevented by human beings, but above all, they suffer. Here, Dr. Macmillan is saying, listen carefully. We have a chance to speak up, decide, do the right thing. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. teach, the time is always right to do the right things. Let me repeat. The time is always right to do the right thing. You know what? This is written in the Bible. And I read, remember, I'm theologist. What is the origin of the wars between you? Well, you have an army of bad desires deep down in your soul and out of envy. You kill to get what you want. And then the Bible says, great speeches are made with words, but words are flame of fire. A single word can set an entire forest on fire. We will know that the Second World War was inevitable. Many soldiers, teachers, and students died, and we remember them as heroes. But the Holocaust of the Jewish people also happened, which we remembered in the previous month, along with the Day of Education. A little contradiction. While outside the war was going on, 13 years old German Jewish girl, Anne Frank, took advantage of the time and wrote in her diary, the day will come when this horrible war ends, and we will be people like everyone else again, and not only Jews. She also wrote, despite everything, and I think people are good at her. When she said, I don't think about the misery, but about the beauty that still remains. I remember Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel, when she said, we don't rejoice in wars. We rejoice when we develop a new type of cotton, or when strawberries bloom in Israel. About Anne Frank, John Fitzgerald Kennedy said, among the many who throughout history have spoken on behalf of human dignity in times of suffering and death, there is no voice that carries more weight than that of Anne Frank. Martin Luther, religious reformer, survived the 14th century Black Death or bubonic plague, the pandemic, remember? 14th century. And killed about 60% of Europe's population. And he said, war is the greatest plague that attacks humanity. It destroys religion, it destroys nations, it destroys families. It is the worst of evils. Even if the end of the world is tomorrow, I will plant apples in my church. Great. I wonder how it is possible that Anne Frank, Golda Meir, and Martin Luther teach us about life when all around them there is only suffering and death. George Steiner asked, what is that empowers a man or a woman to teach another human being? What is the source of his authority? And he answered, it is a process of interrelation, of osmosis between two people, the master and the disciple. The master and the disciple. The master learns from his disciple when he teaches her or him. The teacher has a lot of knowledge. The teacher has a lot of knowledge, and that gives him power, but the intensity and quality of the communication with the disciple generates friendship, and he can teach ethical and moral values. Andreas Slater said, what really matters is not what you know, but what you can do with what you know. I think the best we can do is teach what little we know. I think that the only difference between a teacher and his disciple is that the teacher started before. But as people, they are both in the same level. Are you agree? If we want to listen and learn from our teacher, we will walk close to him. Okay? As the Japanese proverb say, more than 1,000 hours of diligent study, it is better to spend a day with our teacher. A study by Professor Robert Waldinger at Harvard University showed that it's the quality of our close relationships more than money or fame that keeps people happy and healthy. Good genes are nice, but joy is better. This is great. Are you agree? Great. The Chinese master, Tojin Senji, had a special relationship with his disciple. In 1227, he told them, honorable disciples, follow the legitimate lineage of the patriarchs. If you persevere, you will be like them. Here, I'm once again reminded of Anne Frank when she wrote, people will always follow a good example. Be you and me who sets a good example. In a short time, others will follow you. And me, I hope. Nelson Mandela said, when we let our light shine, we unthinkingly give others permission to do the same. In 1324, when the Chinese master Keiser died, he left a legacy, a teaching to his disciple that continue to this today. He said, learning and thinking is staying on the door. To adopt the lotus position is to come home and sit in peace. In other words, he said, listen carefully. It is not enough to learn and think. It is necessary that you do it in times of peace. It does not necessarily speak of meditation, but it speaks of times of peace. When we accept this invitation today, we don't just stand at the door. We go in, sit down, and enjoy a times of peace. Are you agree? I want to remember another history in 2012. Malala Yousafzai. Remember a Pakistani human rights activist was attacked by Taliban men because she, since she was 12 years old, has been working for girls' rights education. She received the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize. In her speech in the United Nations in 2015, she said, listen carefully. A child, a teacher, a pen, a book can change the world. Education is not Eastern and Western. Education is education, and it is the right of every human being. I will get my education whether at home, at the school, or anywhere else. Nelson Mandela also said, listen carefully. Education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. So, as Martin Luther said, if you want to change the world, take your pen and write. Take your pen and write. Write articles, books, words for building, not for destroying. Today, children need that. Einstein said to his son, if your teacher say, don't play the piano, go ahead, play the piano. Okay? Garry Kasparov, remember Garry Kasparov became the youngest world chess champion in history, said, I learned a lot from great players of the past, but mainly from my rival and teacher Anatoly Karpov. Kasparov learned war and peace strategies, and he said, in chess, as in the reality of life, it is necessary to analyze, discard, organize thought, understand the action that can occur, have solution ready, know how to conclude and study all possible variants, being able to make a virtue of necessary and understand the powers of the adversary to convert them to one's own benefit. For this, it is essential to have a strong discipline, intuition, and logic that make it easier for us to approach common problems. Just like in everyday life, situational awareness helps us live and face challenges with prospect of success. Every move in chess creates tension. Those who play chess know this. Likewise, every movement between nations in conflict affects education. Let's take a moment in Laura's position to think about the current crisis, the words we say, and the decision we must make. But we need to be clear about whether we see the crisis as a threat or an opportunity. Police writer Stanley Lavesh, let's say, that with courage and experience, we can come to accept all crises. Instead of being afraid of that moment of maximum stress and risk, we should accept them as inevitable and focus on improving our ability to predict and respond to them, assume the consequences. Albert Einstein said, the crisis is the best blessing that can happen to people and countries because the crisis brings progress. What do you think? Is a contradiction? Let me explain the word blessing. In Spanish, blessing is bendición. Bendición. Hablar bien, decir bien, hacer el bien. In English, blessing means good diction, speak well, wish well, do good another. One day, a student asked to the psychologist and anthropologist what she considered the first sign of civilization in a culture. She did not answer that the bones were found in excavations. She said, helping someone through difficulty is the starting point of civilization. This is the great teaching. It speaks of the value of service or mutual support. When Jimmy Carter took office as president of the United States in 1977, he was greeted with a great nation, but with a deep crisis of basic moral values. The consequence was a crisis of confidence. The president said, this is a crisis that hits the heart, soul, and spirit of our national will. We can see this crisis in the growing, though, about the meaning of our own lives and in the loss of a unity of purpose for our nation. The erosion of our trustworthiness to destroy America's social and political future. Since then, President Carter has set out to help the nation through the difficulty, and he strengthened laws, and he left an important legacy of value that some appreciated and others rejected. Here, Jimmy Carter speaks of a leadership crisis. In my opinion, this crisis is growing and remains to details globally. Doris Kearns Goodwin, Pulitzer 1995, asked, how does the adversity affect the leadership? Do hard times shape the leader, or does the leader shape the times? How do leaders give people lives and sense of purpose for meaning? Leaders like Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and Lyndon Johnson took office in periods of uncertainty, with personal and state crises. It was leadership in turbulent times, but they learned their lesson, and with steadfast character and resilience, they developed a strict leadership. Honorable diplomats, teachers, colleagues, authors, you have heard me repeat several times in this message the respectful expression, listen carefully. I say with respect, listening is an essential capacity of the brain for the teaching and learning process. Neuroscientist Stanislav Dehaene said, it is the first pillar of learning with which education can improve the capacity of our brain. Neuroeducator Francisco Mora said the listening causes emotion, emotion causes curiosity, curiosity causes attention, and attention knowledge, learning, and stimulates the brain. Technologies are fundamental, but they can never replace the teacher, said Dr. Mora. The William Glasser learning theory says that we learn 20% of what we hear and 90% of what we teach. Therefore, as I said before, the best we can do is teach that little we know. I think that in this time of turbulence due to the pandemic, technologies have given us a time of peace for learning, but technologies don't listen. But people do. Listening is the key in the reciprocal teacher-disciple relationship. To listen, we need to sit in the lotus position without distraction in times of peace. I want to connect this principle with neuroeducation. An external stimulus produces learning in our brain. It is an internal result. Peace, which is internal, stimulates the brain and produces external results, the decision and action of peace. Peace, like loves, are decisions. Therefore, everything depends on each one of us. We are here in this symposium, sitting in lotus position in times of peace, doing education. But at the end of this symposium, what are we going to do with what we have here? Two of the objectives of the UNESCO 2030 agenda is to work for the construction of peace and promote quality education for all. Who is going to make this possible? We have a task. Today, here, we are doing a part of task. If we don't do it or think it can be done, someone else will. Poet Edgar Guest said, "Can't is the worst word that's written or spoken." As Ben-Gurion, who proclaimed the creation of the state of Israel, said, if an expert say, "I can be done," he looks for another expert. Dr. Stephen J. Gross, applying his turbulence theory to educational leadership in challenging times, said, in our increasingly complex world, the turbulence force affecting educators have become vastly more dynamic, creating complex challenges, but paradoxically also unique opportunities. Education professor Dana Mitra said, the concept of turbulence provides an important and useful lens to understand the possibilities for educational change. We must disrupt the system for change to occur, but not so much that chaos makes a path forward impossible. And the professor Judy Alston said, turbulent times call for our resources that provides clear approaches and options that help make sense in the midst of chaos, anxiety, and uncertainty in the school of the 21st century. We can bring about change in education. We can strengthen relationship between teacher and student, between parents and children, between friends, between governments, etc. It is a priority to present new proposals for academic curricula or to promote educational policies from the government that guarantee a true quality education with happy teachers and students, with happy teachers and students. We can transform secondary education so that families and teachers teach students moral values, promote the development of new skills, leadership, critical thinking, reading, writing, debating, art, cultural racism, teaching them how to face a crisis, how to resolve conflicts, and how to build with peace. In general, educate students to be successful in college and useful and productive in 21st century society. When will we do all the what? And Frank tell us, We don't have to wait for an exact moment before starting to improve the world. Nelson Mandela, for his part, said, if you wait for the ideal conditions to do what you want, they will never happen. I think the time is today. Thank you for listening in the Lord's position to this message of education in times of peace. And remember, to adopt the Lord's position is to come home and sit in peace. God bless you all, and thank you.